Human Rights Watch, meanwhile, is urging Bahraini authorities to drop all criminal charges against two prominent human rights activists, Nabil Rajab and Zainab al-Khawaja. Rajab is due in court on October the 29th to face charges of offending the Interior Ministry and may be sentenced to 3 years in jail. Zainab al-Khawaja could also receive up to 7 years in jail on charges of insulting the King of Bahrain. She is scheduled to stand trial on October the 30th. Human Rights Watch believes that the two activists' charges clearly violate their right to the freedom of speech. The organization has also called on Manama to immediately revoke all laws that violate the freedom of speech, including those that criminalize insulting or defaming state institutions or the monarch. Well, to discuss that further, I joined with Ms. Tara O'Grady, who is an independent human rights advocate, and she's joining us live now from Dublin. Ms. O'Grady, thanks very much for joining us here on Press TV. How do you feel about the chances of Nabil Rajab going to jail or even Zainab al-Khawaja?
Well, they've done it before. Nabil was arrested for, again, criticising the regime in cyberspace on Twitter, and I echo his words. Many Bahraini men who joined terrorism and ISIS came from security institutions, and those institutions were the first ideological incubator. So he condemned himself in 140 characters. Is he culpable only because he's Bahraini? Or can I too share his fate because I'm just another person using my freedom of expression? In the case of Zainab al-Khawaja, she's detained for tearing up a picture of Hamad al-Khalifa when inside the country. So if I do that too, but on television, which is also a cyberspace and the public arena, is there a possibility of them seeking my extradition so that I can be held culpable? It's not disrespectful to ridicule a symbol of torture and tyranny, as very unfortunately the picture of the Bahraini king has become, kind of like the swastika. So how more insulted would you be if I took this picture here, which we all recognize, and this picture here, and I did that? So how can they think then that the so-called elections that they're holding at the moment are actually
I'm wondering, Ms. Gray, I do apologize for interrupting. I just want to ask that I imagine that the Bahraini regime understands a lot of what you have just mentioned. It's certainly, their image is certainly taking a beating worldwide, and especially in, of course, human rights advocates such as yourself. So why do they keep hitting themselves over the head? I just don't get it.
I think that they're so easy to insult, and it really shows their fragility. They aren't thick-skinned at all, and they see themselves really slipping. So this constant barrage of accusations against the remaining human rights defenders or anybody who's in political opposition to them is it's just their last kick, basically. They've imprisoned over 3,000 people. All of the opposition is in prison. And it's the last few remaining people who still have a voice, whether they're outside or inside. They've exiled anybody who they maybe have left because they were facing life sentences and removed people's citizenship.
And of course, Ms. O'Grady, on a final point, this is all happening while Bahrain is not sitting silent. It is putting forth a PR campaign of sorts, as hired PR companies. I've even seen ads a number of times on CNN for Bahrain being a wonderful place to do business. How do you feel about that?
Okay, well, if you look up Google and you look for Bahrain on Google, you're going to see palm trees, which there aren't very many left of. And they have this reputation, just like you're saying. But if you put tear gas in beside there, or torture in beside there, or political prisoners in beside there, you get a completely different picture. You have Prince Nasser was over in London in recent days, completely thwarting and flying in the face of the British government, saying that he was no longer to be held immune to charges on the allegations of torture that he's under. He went over to London because he sponsored a science program over there. They are trying so hard to have some foothold of credibility still that they're becoming quite ridiculous.
Okay, well, we'll leave it on that point, but we do, of course, appreciate you joining us. That was Ms. Tara O'Grady, who was speaking to us live from Dublin.